Well, joining us for more on the highlights of today's briefing by the CBN Governor on the news at 10 is Mr. Bismarck. He is the Chief Executive Officer, Financial Derivatives Company Limited. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
First, let's get your reactions to the measure by the CBN stopping the sale of FX to BDC operators. Why is this coming now?
Firstly, let us understand what this is all about. The Bureau de Changes are financial intermediaries between the Apex Bank, the market, and the retail segment. Now, what had happened in the past was that these guys were supposed to sell foreign exchange principally to people who are traveling out of the country, buying from tourists that are coming in, and also actually filling up that gap because of the lack of financial inclusion. But, unwittingly, this had become a major source of concern to the regulators, and rightly so. So what had happened was that these guys would buy foreign exchange at 400 naira, and an hour later sell it at 500 naira. So in 2000, we had 74 BDC operators. By 2010, it had increased 27-fold. In other words, we now had, from 74, we had 2,000 operators. By 2020, they had gone up to 5,000. In the last quarter, the federal government of Nigeria spent, in other words, the central bank, spent more on travel, that is, on tourism, actually $472 million, than debt service, $173 million. No country in the world can survive that kind of hemorrhage. So, rightfully, the central bank had to take steps. Some have argued that, after all, they were licensed by the Central Bank of Nigeria in the first place. But that's water under the bridge. The reality is that what was happening was blatant, daylight robbery, mind my French, rape. Now, so what steps to be taken? Step number one is to stop everything as they are, right? So which is administrative controls. But the problem is that the moment you stop things administratively, you now create a further black market premium. So people are going to be inconvenienced. The central bank says, go to the banks. Yes, I agree with the central bank governor. But you and I know that walking into a bank and coming out within 5 minutes, it's easier to put 50 flies in a matchbox than to go into a bank and come out in 5 minutes. Right? So anything that is cumbersome, that's inconvenient, will push people further away from the system. So people would suffer. The ultimate solution, and I recommend, is that, look, we know the power market rate every day. So it's 505 today, maybe 500 naira. The central bank should encourage people to go to the banks, one, but should sell to the Bureau de Changes at the power market rate less 5%. In other words, if the power market is 500, sell to the Bureau de Changes at 490. The 10 naira margin is way, way lower than the 100 naira margin, right? So the central bank was spending $100 million a week, $440 million a month, and $5 billion a year for travels when there was COVID restrictions. By the time you pay for your COVID test here, pay there, come back, and the cost is immense. So, yeah, this was not tenable one and was not sustainable. So that is the important thing you have to note.
So what do you think would happen? Because you've made this recommendation, your suggestion on the solution, but with the decision they've taken, would this snowball into something worse?
No, nothing is cast in stone. The truth is that administrative solutions have their limits. It will be abused one way or the other. So the best thing to do is to have a market solution and an administrative solution working together. Let the banks, if you want to buy your PTA and you have your documents, go to the banks. You can find the time to do that. If you're in a hurry to do anything, you're a trader or whatever, you're a smuggler, because it's a smuggler's dream come true, go and pay the market. The fact that the price has increased means that the demand will fall. And therefore, I think that will bring some stability. But in the meantime, we must agree that something had to be done. No country could have gone along this way.
The MPC also decided to leave its rates unchanged to sustain economic recovery. Are you happy with the parameters?
Yes. The truth is that the recovery, as what we say, Nigeria is moving but struggling. The rate of growth is 0.5% in Q1. At best in Q2, it will come out at about 2.6, 2.7%. Still below the population growth rate. Still tepid, but it's moving in the right direction, but very slowly. What needs to be done is to actually have a solution that deals with lack of investment, low capital formation. So to do that, you have a catch-22 situation where you need to bring up interest rates in the final analysis sometime to increase savings, and when savings increase, there will be investment. But in the meantime, because there are cost pushing, and you don't want monetary policy to complement fiscal policy. The fiscal policy is to stimulate growth at this time. The president signed yesterday before going to the UK, signed the supplementary budget. That's a stimulus plan. So what I see the central bank doing is to try and go in what I call this, go pro-cyclically with the fiscal authorities, but go counter-cyclically with the economy. In other words, trying to encourage growth and encourage, because we have high unemployment, we have high inflation. Even though official inflation is supposed to be declining, the truth is that there are signs that that may not be right.
And I want us to talk about commodities and
Yes.
how the prices are really going up. I know that in one of the slides here you talked about how it appears that Nigerians are eating less. 1 in 2 Nigerians are eating less now. And is this bound to get worse, especially with what we have?
They say when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. We took 11 commodities between June and July. Not, if we do year on year, it's much more. Between June and July, and look at the result. Yam, new yam, up 15% to 1,500. Gari, up 3.6% to 17,000 naira a bag. Beans, up 34,000, right? 6.25%. Look at onions. Onions up 27,000 naira a bag. The biggest culprit is pepper. Pepper is up 50% from 20,000 to 30,000. Not talk of flour, cement, chicken, rice, tomatoes, eggs. So things are getting tough. And that is why they said 1 in 2 Nigerians is eating less quantity and less quality at a time of COVID, where you need the best immunity and best resistance. So that's difficult. Not only that, 1 in 4 Nigerians is buying less of non-food items. In other words, refrigerators and things like that. So what is important to note is that food is impulsive buying. You buy it on impulse. But even in non-impulsive purchases, you are actually reducing the amount you are consuming. So what do you need to do? You have to put money in the hands of people. You need to give them jobs. You need to do things. And they are impeded by security problems, insurgency. So there's a combination of things that are affecting people. But let's go back to the primary mandate of the central bank. The Central Bank of Nigeria says that price stability mandate. So we've seen official inflation moderating. We've seen exchange rate stability, right? Because official rate has been moved to 411. So there's some crawling peg, static peg arithmetic going on there. Boosting investor confidence, slowly but a bit mixed signals. But complementing fiscal policy is important. Now the question is, what next and what happens? What should Nigerians look out for?
You can summarize that in 30 seconds.
I will do that. Oil prices will stay above $70. Oil brought us where we are, and we need oil to take us out. 2, GDP growth is not going to be great, but at least positive. The exchange rate remains sticky and become an issue. I suspect and I expect that the central bank will revise this thing so that there's no hardship to the people. But we'll sanitize the system and then make sure that things happen. But finally, the biggest risk is that only 1% of Nigerians have been vaccinated. Something has to be done to increase the vaccination in a hurry. Because in Senegal, they have 99% occupancy in the hospitals, and people are dying on the streets. And that's just around the corner. I think airline tickets will increase, so it's going to be a tough Q3. But hopefully, Q4 will be better. as we go into the Christmas.
I'd like to thank you, Mr. Bismarck Ruwane, Chief Executive Officer, Financial Derivatives Company. Thank you for joining us on the News at 10.
Thank you for having me.